The Ashen Key Murders, Part 3. Chapter 13. The Return of an Old Rival. 221, Harrow Street, 6:10 a.m. The candle burned low, wax pooling onto the wooden surface of Alistair Graves' desk. The study was silent, save for the occasional creak of the old house settling in the London chill. Graves sat in his chair, his fingers steepled, the blackened key resting on the table before him. Eleanor Blackwood sat across from him, her face pale but resolute. "You mean to let them recruit you?" she whispered. Graves gave a slow smirk. It would seem the most efficient course of action. Eleanor's hands clenched in her lap. "Efficient? Graves, they will test you. The same way they tested my father, the same way they are testing Jonathan." Graves tilted his head. "I expect they will." "And what if they expect you to kill?" she demanded. Graves' smile did not waver. "Then I suppose we'll see how convincing I can be." Eleanor exhaled sharply. "Jonathan would tell you this is madness." Graves' eyes darkened. "Jonathan isn't here to tell me anything." A heavy silence settled over them. Then, suddenly, a sharp knock rattled the front door. Graves and Eleanor froze. The knocking came again. Harder. More insistent. Graves reached for his revolver. "We weren't expecting company." Eleanor swallowed. "The society?" Graves rose silently, moving toward the door. He positioned himself to the side of the frame, gun in hand. Another knock. Then a voice. Low. Familiar. Laced with amusement. "Graves. I do hope you're home. I'd hate to have come all this way for nothing." Graves' grip on the revolver tightened. Eleanor whispered, "Who is that?" Graves exhaled through his nose. Displeased. "That," he muttered, "is Sebastian Renwick." Eleanor frowned. "And who in God's name is that?" Graves turned the brass handle and pulled the door open abruptly. Standing on the threshold was a man of equal height, dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit, his blonde hair slicked back with precise elegance. His face was sharp, his smirk practiced, his green eyes alight with mischief. "Sebastian Renwick." "Good morning, Graves," Renwick drawled, brushing past him into the study without invitation. Graves sighed, closing the door. "Of course. Come in." Sebastian Renwick settled himself into one of the armchairs, crossing his legs as he surveyed the study. "Still as insufferably cluttered as ever," he remarked, nodding toward the bookshelves. Graves leaned against his desk, arms crossed. "To what do I owe the displeasure, Renwick?" Eleanor observed their dynamic with intrigue. "You two know each other." Renwick's smirk widened. "Oh, Miss Blackwood. Graves and I are old acquaintances." Graves corrected him. "Old rivals." Renwick placed a hand over his heart. "You wound me, truly." Eleanor looked between them. "You work together?" Renwick chuckled. "Once upon a time. Graves and I, we used to hunt the same monsters." Graves sighed. Renwick was an operative for the Crown's Secret Intelligence Division. Renwick smirked. "Still am. Officially, at least." Eleanor's brow furrowed. "And unofficially?" Renwick's eyes gleamed. "Unofficially, I tend to make myself useful wherever intriguing business arises." Graves narrowed his eyes. "You aren't here by coincidence." Renwick's smirk faded slightly. "No," he admitted. "I'm here because you are about to do something extremely foolish." Graves tilted his head. "Define foolish." Renwick leaned forward. "I hear you plan to infiltrate the Ashen Key Society." Eleanor stiffened. Graves simply smiled. Renwick exhaled, rubbing his temple. "Graves, must you always aim for the most suicidal course of action?" Graves gestured vaguely. "It keeps things interesting." Renwick scoffed. "And what do you expect to find?" Graves' smile vanished. "Jonathan." Renwick's expression shifted. The amusement in his gaze dimmed, replaced by something colder. "So it's personal." Graves' fingers drummed against the desk. "I imagine you wouldn't be here unless you had something useful." Renwick sighed. "You truly don't care for subtlety, do you?" Graves smirked. "I don't have the time for it." Renwick studied him, then reached into his coat pocket. He withdrew a small folded document and tossed it onto the desk. Graves picked it up, unfolding the parchment. Inside was a name and an address. Lord Julian Rathbone, The Glass Manor, Kensington. Eleanor frowned. "Who is he?" Renwick's smirk returned. "A senior member of the Ashen Key Society. More importantly," he leaned back in his chair, "he's the one overseeing the next initiation." Graves' pulse quickened. Eleanor's eyes widened. "You mean he'll know where Jonathan is?" Renwick's smirk sharpened. "Not just where. He'll know what the next trial will be." A beat of silence. Then Graves folded the parchment and tucked it into his coat. Renwick tilted his head. So you're actually going to do it? Graves smirked. Wouldn't you? Renwick exhaled. Perhaps. But unlike you, I tend to avoid annoying secret societies that specialize in murder. He stood, adjusting his cuffs. I suggest you act quickly. The initiation is scheduled to take place within the next 12 hours. Eleanor's breath hitched. Then we don't have much time. Renwick's amusement faded. He stepped toward the door. Graves, he said quietly. Graves met his gaze. Renwick hesitated. Then, just briefly, his smirk wavered. Be careful. Then, with a final incline of his head, he stepped out into the morning fog and was gone. The study fell into silence. Eleanor turned to Graves. Well, Graves reached into his pocket, pulling out the blackened key. His fingers traced the burned metal. Then, slowly, he smirked. It's time I received my invitation. Eleanor swallowed. We're really doing this. Graves glanced at her. No, I'm doing this. Eleanor's jaw clenched. I'm coming with you. Graves shook his head. Too dangerous. Eleanor glared. Jonathan is my friend too. Graves sighed. He pinched the bridge of his nose. Then, finally, he murmured, fine. Eleanor blinked. Really? Graves smirked. Just don't get yourself killed. Eleanor smiled darkly. No promises. And so, as the first hints of dawn crept over London, they began their deadliest game yet. Chapter 14. The Ashen Key Society. The Glass Manor, Kensington, 7:30 p.m. The sky over London was a deep indigo, the first hints of night settling over the city. Gas lamps flickered to life, their golden glow reflecting off the damp cobblestones as Alistair Graves and Eleanor Blackwood stood at the entrance of the Glass Manor. The estate loomed vast and silent, a grand relic of Victorian opulence, white stone columns, stained glass windows, and a vast iron gate adorned with the motif of a key. But despite its beauty, something about the place felt wrong. A house full of secrets. Eleanor adjusted her mask, a delicate black silk piece that covered the upper half of her face. She wore an elegant, dark evening gown, blending seamlessly with the other guests arriving at the society's gathering. Graves stood beside her, dressed in a tailored black suit, formal, but deceptively simple. His own mask, a silver half-mask, concealed just enough of his face to maintain anonymity. The invitation, the blackened key in his pocket, was the only proof required for entry. Eleanor whispered, Do you think Jonathan is here? Graves' sharp eyes scanned the guests slipping through the grand doors, their voices low, their movements precise. If he is, Graves murmured, we'll find him before the night is through. Then, with calm, calculated ease, he stepped forward, pressing the blackened key into the waiting hands of the doorman. Without a word, the gate creaked open, and they stepped into the heart of the Ashen Key Society. The entrance hall of the Glass Manor was breathtaking, an expanse of polished marble, chandeliers of twisting iron, and tapestries embroidered with ancient symbols. Dozens of masked figures drifted through the room, their conversations hushed but deliberate. No one acknowledged one another by name. Every person here was a shadow. A servant approached, offering 2 glasses of wine. Graves accepted his without hesitation. He let the liquid swirl in the glass, inhaling briefly. No scent of poison. Eleanor, however, merely pretended to sip hers. From the far end of the room, a soft chime rang. A voice followed, deep and resonant. Welcome. The crowd turned. A figure stood at the top of the grand staircase, an older gentleman in an impeccable suit, his mask adorned with gold filigree. Graves recognized him instantly. Lord Julian Rathbone, one of the highest-ranking members of the Ashen Key Society. He smiled faintly, lifting a hand. You are here because you have been chosen. Tonight, you stand at the threshold of something greater than yourself. A pause. Then, the doors to the ballroom swung open, and the initiation began. The ballroom was a cavernous space, lit by hundreds of candles floating in elaborate iron chandeliers. A vast mahogany table stood at the center, lined with cards, documents, and quill pens. Rathbone stepped forward. Tonight, you will be presented with a choice, he said, voice smooth and authoritative. A test of allegiance. Graves and Eleanor exchanged a glance. This was it. The Ashen Key Society does not accept cowards, Rathbone continued. We accept only those willing to prove themselves. He gestured toward the table. At first, Graves thought it was a simple wagering game. Then he saw it. The black envelopes. One in front of each initiate. Rathbone smiled faintly. Inside these envelopes, you will find a task. An assignment that will determine whether or not you are worthy to enter our ranks. The room fell silent. Eleanor's breath hitched. Graves exhaled slowly. Then, the masked enforcers began distributing the envelopes. One by one, the initiates took their letters, unfolding them in tense silence. When the enforcer reached Graves, he took his without hesitation. His fingers slid beneath the wax seal. He unfolded the parchment, and his pulse slowed. There, in precise, slanted handwriting, were just 2 words. Kill Whitmore. Graves' expression did not change. But his mind was a hurricane. So this was their game. They had Jonathan. And now, they expected him to execute his closest friend. A test. A trap. A power play. Beside him, Eleanor read her own assignment. Her fingers tensed slightly, but she said nothing. Graves glanced at her. She met his gaze. Understanding. They couldn't react. Not yet. Rathbone's voice echoed through the chamber. Your tasks are absolute, he said. Failure will not be tolerated. You have until dawn. Graves exhaled slowly. A trap. But a trap works both ways. He slid the parchment into his pocket and lifted his glass of wine. A slow, calculated smile curved his lips. Then I suppose we'll have to be very creative. Eleanor whispered. What do we do now? Graves' eyes gleamed. We play along. In the depths of the glass manor, Dr. Jonathan Whitmore sat shackled to a wooden chair. The room was dark, lit only by a single candle. His wrists were bound, his body weak from exhaustion. The door creaked open. A figure stepped inside. Lucian Thorne. His golden eye gleamed in the candlelight. He knelt beside Whitmore, his voice smooth. They have given Graves his task, he murmured. Whitmore's jaw clenched. And what would that be? Thorne smiled. To kill you. Whitmore exhaled sharply. Then he'll never pass their test. Thorne tilted his head. Oh, you misunderstand, Doctor. His fingers brushed the handle of a dagger. If Graves doesn't kill you, the golden eye gleamed. Then I will. Chapter 15. The Woman in the Red Veil. The Glass Manor, Kensington, 8:05 p.m. The ballroom remained eerily silent, the weight of the test lingering like an unspoken threat. Alistair Graves held the blackened envelope in his gloved fingers. The words inside burned into his mind. Kill Whitmore. Across the room, masked initiates folded their own instructions, their gazes unreadable beneath their disguises. Some straightened their spines with silent resolve. Others hesitated, clenching their letters as if they held a death sentence. Because in a way, they did. Only the ones who completed their tasks would walk away from this alive. Graves kept his expression neutral, slipping the parchment into his pocket. Beside him, Eleanor Blackwood did the same with her own letter, her lips pressed into a thin, unyielding line. Rathbone watched them closely from the top of the grand staircase, his gloved hands resting lightly on the polished railing. A predator observing his prey. Then, with a graceful nod, he raised a single hand. Your assignments have been delivered, he announced. What you do next is up to you. A low murmur rippled through the room. The air shifted. Some initiates exchanged brief glances before slipping into the shadows. Others left with deliberate purpose, vanishing into the corridors of the glass manor. Eleanor whispered under her breath, We need to move. Graves gave a slow nod, his mind already working. They had to find Jonathan fast. But just as they turned to leave, a new presence entered the room. And the entire atmosphere changed. The doors to the ballroom swung open, and a woman stepped through. The very air seemed to pause in her wake. She was draped in an elegant crimson gown, its fabric pooling like spilled wine as she moved across the polished floor. A delicate red veil cascaded from her mask, concealing everything but the sharp curve of her lips. And yet, despite the anonymity, her presence was suffocating. The room shifted as masked initiates instinctively moved aside, creating an invisible path for her. Even Rathbone straightened slightly, his jaw tightening. Graves' sharp gaze locked onto her immediately. Whoever she was, she commanded authority. She strode toward the center of the room with perfect poise, stopping just before the grand staircase. Rathbone finally spoke, his tone carrying the faintest edge of displeasure. You're late. The woman in red gave a soft chuckle, her voice smooth as silk. My apologies, Lord Rathbone, she murmured. But I do so enjoy making an entrance. Graves narrowed his eyes. She was playing a game, and the room was obliged to follow her lead. Rathbone exhaled. You are always a distraction, aren't you? She smiled beneath the veil. Then consider me a necessary one. Her dark gaze flicked across the ballroom, lingering for the briefest second on Graves and Eleanor. And just like that, he knew. She wasn't just another member. She was here for them. Graves had spent years mastering the art of reading people. Every movement, every flick of an eye, every slight pause in speech told a story. And in that brief moment of eye contact, he understood three things about the woman in red. She knew who he was. She had something to tell him. She couldn't say it aloud. His pulse slowed, his mind shifting gears. If she was an enemy, she wouldn't be making a show of her presence. Which meant she might be a player on his side. Or at the very least, against Rathbone. Eleanor must have sensed it too. She whispered, "Who is she?" Graves' lips barely moved. "I don't know. But she's not just a guest." The woman turned, gracefully heading toward the opposite end of the ballroom. As she passed, she let something slip from her fingers. A folded note. It landed lightly on a silver tray beside a passing waiter, nearly imperceptible. But Graves saw it. And that was all he needed. Graves moved quickly, intercepting the waiter with casual ease. He lifted a random glass of champagne from the tray, fingers deftly snatching the note as he did so. Without breaking stride, he and Eleanor exited the ballroom, slipping into one of the manor's quieter hallways. Only when they were certain they were alone did Graves unfold the parchment. The message was written in flawless cursive. "Graves, your friend is alive. But he won't be for long. They are preparing him for the final trial. Meet me in the Winter Garden in 10 minutes. L." Eleanor exhaled sharply. L? Graves' mind raced. He knew only one woman who would go to such lengths to remain unseen. And if it was her? This was about to become even more dangerous. He folded the note carefully. "Change of plans," he murmured. Eleanor swallowed. "We trust her." Graves' smile was razor-sharp. "No," he tucked the parchment into his coat. "But we listen." Then, with precise, practiced steps, they moved toward the Winter Garden. Straight into whatever trap awaited them next. In the dimly lit underground chamber, Dr. Jonathan Whitmore sat motionless, his breathing slow, controlled. His wrists were no longer bound, because Lucian Thorne had just placed a pistol into his hands. Thorne's golden eye gleamed. "Your executioner has been chosen." Whitmore's throat was dry. "Graves." Thorne smiled. "Yes. Let's see if he values his life more than yours." Chapter 16. A Deadly Game of Chess. The Winter Garden, the Glass Manor, 8:20 p.m. The Winter Garden was unlike the rest of the Glass Manor. While the ballroom and corridors were wrapped in dark opulence, the garden was silent, untouched by the weight of secrets. A vast glass dome arched over the space, trapping the last remnants of twilight within its towering iron framework. Ancient ivy coiled around marble statues, their weathered faces gazing down at rows of white roses, glowing pale in the dim candlelight. The scent of damp earth clung to the air. And at the very center of the garden, beneath the glass dome, stood a single iron table. A chessboard sat upon it, the pieces already arranged mid-game. Waiting for them. Graves and Eleanor Blackwood stepped through the archway. Graves' sharp eyes scanned the shadows. No guards. No enforcers. No visible threats. But he didn't let himself relax. The woman in red was already here. She stood on the far side of the chess table, the folds of her crimson gown pooling over the stone floor. Her red veil still concealed her face, but something about her posture, her calculated stillness, made Graves certain. She was waiting for them. Eleanor tensed. "Are you sure about this?" "No," Graves murmured. "But let's see what she has to say." They stepped forward. The woman lifted a delicate hand, resting it lightly on the white queen. "You always were good at chess, Graves," she murmured. And just like that, Graves' suspicion was confirmed. He knew exactly who she was. His lips curled slightly, but there was no humor in it. "So, it really is you," he said. The woman gave a soft chuckle, her fingers tapping the chess piece. "You don't seem surprised." "I'm rarely surprised these days." Graves exhaled. "But I am, mildly annoyed." She tilted her head. "You wound me." Eleanor glanced between them. "Who is she?" The woman in red lifted a single hand, her gloved fingers removing the delicate veil. And there she was, Lady Lysandra Hawthorne. A name spoken in hushed tones among London's most dangerous circles. Once a brilliant informant, a woman who traded in secrets like currency. But more importantly, she was Graves' old flame, and one of the only people who had ever outmaneuvered him. Eleanor blinked. "You know her?" Graves exhaled. "Unfortunately." Lysandra smirked, taking a seat at the chess table. "Shall we?" She gestured toward the empty chair across from her. Graves sighed but sat. I assume you have information. I also assume you're going to make me work for it. Lysandra leaned forward, her dark eyes gleaming. Of course. What would be the fun in handing it to you? Graves reached out, moving his first piece. A pawn. A simple opening. Lysandra watched, amused, then moved her knight. I have limited time before Rathbone starts suspecting something, she murmured. So let's make this quick. Graves leaned back. Then let's start with the obvious. He tapped a finger against the chessboard. Jonathan. Where is he? Lysandra moved her bishop. Alive for now. But he won't be for long. Graves stilled. Eleanor swallowed. Where are they keeping him? Lysandra's lips curled. Ah, that's the tricky part. She moved her queen. You see, Whitmore isn't just a prisoner anymore. Graves' eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Lysandra studied the board, then smiled. They've made him part of the final trial. Eleanor's breath hitched. What trial? Lysandra lifted her rook, setting it down smoothly. The initiation trial, she murmured. The same one you were just assigned, Graves. Eleanor stiffened. Graves' fingers tightened around his king. So they want me to kill him. Lysandra smirked. And if you don't, someone else will. Graves moved his knight, his movements deliberate. Then where is it happening? Lysandra tilted her head. You're asking the wrong question. Graves' jaw tensed. Then what's the right one? Lysandra's fingers hovered over the queen's knight. The real question, dear Graves, she moved the piece, is who else is playing this game? The words hung between them, heavy and sharp. Eleanor exhaled slowly. Who else is involved? Lysandra smirked. The Ashen Key Society never leaves things to chance. She leaned forward. There is a second initiate, a rival executioner. Graves didn't react outwardly, but internally, his mind sharpened. Eleanor's lips parted. You mean, someone else has been ordered to kill Jonathan? Lysandra's eyes glowed with amusement. Yes. She reached for a pawn, moving it with deliberate slowness. 2 candidates have been assigned the same target. She lifted her gaze to Graves. And whoever succeeds wins their place in the society. Silence. Eleanor paled. Then Jonathan is a prize, Graves murmured. His voice was low, controlled. His hands rested against the table, motionless. Lysandra smiled slightly. Yes. Graves exhaled through his nose. Who's the other candidate? Lysandra's smile didn't fade. She moved her queen into an attacking position. And finally, she gave him the name. His name is Corwin Vale. Eleanor frowned. Who is he? Lysandra tilted her head. A killer, she murmured. But unlike you, Graves, he's not pretending to be one. She leaned closer, whispering like a secret, and he never fails. Graves' pulse remained steady. His fingers curled around his knight, shifting it forward. Check. A slow smirk curved his lips. He's never played against me. Lysandra studied the board. Then, with deliberate ease, she tipped her king over. The game was over. But the real match was just beginning. She stood gracefully. You have 4 hours before the trial begins. Graves rose as well. And where will it be? Lysandra's lips curled. In the underground vaults beneath the glass manor. She turned to leave. But just as she passed him, she whispered lowly. Be careful, Graves. She paused, just briefly, her back still to him. This time, you're playing against men who do not bluff. Graves smirked. Then it's a good thing I don't either. Lysandra chuckled. And then she was gone. Eleanor exhaled. God help us. What now? Graves turned, his expression sharp as a blade. Now, he murmured, slipping his dagger back into his sleeve. We go hunting. Chapter 17, The Clockmaker's Secret. The Glass Manor, 9 p.m. The corridors of the Glass Manor had grown eerily quiet. The grand halls, once filled with the murmurs of masked guests, were now a labyrinth of silence. Only those worthy of the Ashen Key Society's ranks remained. Only those willing to kill. Alistair Graves moved swiftly through the dimly lit passageways, Eleanor Blackwood close behind. They had 4 hours before the final trial began, 4 hours to locate Jonathan Whitmore before Corwin Vale did. And yet, Graves had the distinct feeling that time was already against them. Where do we even start? Eleanor whispered. Graves didn't slow. The underground vaults. She frowned. But we don't know how to get there. Graves smirked. No. But I know someone who does. Eleanor glanced at him sharply. Who? He turned a corner and came to an abrupt halt. Standing just beyond the shadow of an archway, hunched over a small golden pocket watch, was a man who didn't quite belong. He was older, round-faced, with wiry spectacles perched on his nose. His fingers worked meticulously over the watch's delicate gears, adjusting them with precision. Eleanor frowned. "Who is that?" Graves' smirk widened. "The Society's clockmaker." The man glanced up, blinking behind his spectacles. When he saw Graves, his fingers stilled over the watch's mechanism. "Ah," he murmured, his voice smooth, deliberate. "Mr. Graves." Graves inclined his head. "Mr. Wren." Eleanor's eyes widened slightly. "You know him?" Graves folded his hands behind his back. "I make it a habit to know everyone of importance." Mr. Wren sighed, snapping the pocket watch shut. "Then I assume you've come for something delicate." Graves smiled. "I always do." Eleanor exhaled. "Can someone explain to me who this man is?" Graves turned to her. "This is Percival Wren, the Society's unofficial clockmaker and record keeper. He ensures that everything within the Glass Manor runs on schedule." Wren gave a thin smile. "An unappreciated art, really." Eleanor blinked. "You mean he keeps time?" Graves chuckled. "Not just time. Everything." He turned back to Wren. "Which is why I need your help." Wren studied him for a long moment. Then he sighed. "I assume this has something to do with the final trial." Graves didn't react. "You always were observant." Wren smirked. "And you were always predictable." He exhaled, glancing around the empty corridor. Then, after a pause, he reached into his coat pocket and produced a small iron key. Eleanor inhaled sharply. "What is that?" Graves' eyes glinted. "The way in." Wren adjusted his glasses. "The underground vaults can only be accessed from the lower wing of the manor. But the entrance is well guarded." Graves pocketed the key. "That won't be an issue." Wren chuckled. "I'd expect nothing less." Then his gaze darkened slightly. "But I must warn you," he murmured. Graves raised an eyebrow. Wren hesitated. "The trial isn't just about execution. It's about control." Eleanor frowned. "What do you mean?" Wren exhaled. "The Society doesn't just want Graves to kill his friend." He lowered his voice. "They want to see if he can be broken." A chill settled between them. For the first time, Eleanor looked at Graves with something close to concern. Graves, however, simply smirked. "They'll be waiting a long time for that." Wren studied him for a beat longer. Then he nodded. "Then I wish you luck, Mr. Graves." Graves turned, his coat brushing against the marble floor. "Keep the time for me, Wren," he murmured over his shoulder. "I'll be back before midnight." And with that, he and Eleanor vanished into the dark. The lower wing of the Glass Manor was eerily abandoned, its corridors coated in silence. At the very end of the passageway stood an unassuming wooden door, its edges worn with age. But Graves knew better. He retrieved Wren's iron key, sliding it into the hidden lock beneath the handle. A faint click. The door creaked open. Beyond it, a spiral staircase of black stone, plunging deep into the earth. Eleanor swallowed. "Are we really doing this?" Graves exhaled. Then he stepped forward and descended into the abyss. The air grew heavier the deeper they went. The scent of damp earth and cold metal clung to the walls. At the bottom of the stairs, a long hallway stretched before them, lined with iron doors. Eleanor shivered. "What is this place?" Graves exhaled. "A prison." They moved forward cautiously, Graves' sharp gaze scanning the numbers engraved into the doors. Then he stopped. "Cell number 13. Eleanor's breath caught. "Is he in there?" Graves didn't answer. He reached out, gripping the heavy iron handle, and pushed. The door swung open, and inside, shackled to the stone wall, was Dr. Jonathan Whitmore. Jonathan's head lifted weakly, his face pale, his shirt torn and stained with blood. But his eyes were still sharp, still alive. "Took you long enough," he muttered. Eleanor let out a breath of relief. Graves stepped inside, kneeling beside him. "Can you walk?" Whitmore exhaled. "Give me 5 minutes." "We don't have 5 minutes." Graves reached for the chains. "Hold still." He retrieved a lockpick from his coat, working swiftly at the restraints. Eleanor stood guard at the door, her eyes darting nervously down the hallway. Then a sound. Boots. Approaching fast. Eleanor tensed. Someone's coming. Graves' pulse remained steady. He worked faster. Click. The first shackle unlocked. Whitmore inhaled sharply, rolling his stiff wrists. Graves turned to the second chain. Another click. The iron clattered to the floor. Then footsteps stopped just outside the door. A voice followed. Deep. Smooth. Dangerous. Well. The door creaked open. A man stood there, dressed in black, his gun already drawn. A smirk curved his lips. I was wondering when you'd get here, Graves. Graves tilted his head. His first glimpse of Corwin Vale. And, for the first time, he met his true opponent. The assassin. The other executioner. The man who had been sent here to kill Jonathan first. And Graves' deadliest obstacle yet. Chapter 18. The Betrayal at Dawn. Underground vaults. The Glass Manor. 9:58 p.m. The air was taut with silence, the flickering torchlight casting jagged shadows against the damp stone walls. Alistair Graves stood with his back to Dr. Jonathan Whitmore, whose wrists had just been freed from their iron shackles. Beside them, Eleanor Blackwood hovered near the doorway, her breath shallow, her fingers twitching toward the dagger concealed beneath her cloak. But their way out was blocked. Standing in the threshold was a man in midnight black attire, his pistol drawn, his smirk unwavering. Corwin Vale. The second executioner. The man who had been given the same assignment as Graves. Kill Jonathan Whitmore. But only one of them would complete the task. Graves studied him. Vale was lean, angular, his face sharpened by years in the dark. A scar traced the corner of his mouth, as if he had once smiled too wide and never fully recovered. His posture was casual, almost lazy. But Graves wasn't fooled. The way Vale held his pistol, relaxed but precise, told him everything he needed to know. This was a man who had never hesitated to kill. Jonathan's voice was low, dry. I take it he's not with us? Graves smirked. Regrettably, no. Vale tilted his head, his gun never wavering. You've made quite the mess, Graves. Breaking into the vaults? Freeing your dear friend? It's a shame, really. His smirk widened. I was looking forward to killing him myself. Eleanor's fingers curled into fists. You're a coward, Vale chuckled. I'm an opportunist, darling. His golden brown eyes flicked toward Graves. And now I've found my opportunity. Graves remained unmoving. And what opportunity is that? Vale's smirk sharpened. You kill him. He gestured at Jonathan. Right here. Right now. Eleanor inhaled sharply. You can't be serious. Vale sighed. Oh, but I am. You see, Graves, the society likes you. His tone was mocking. They think you have potential. They think you're just waiting for the right push. He gestured between them with his pistol. This is it. His eyes gleamed. Kill Whitmore, and they'll open every door for you. Power. Influence. No more running. Jonathan muttered, Well, that's lovely. Vale's voice softened, coaxing. You don't have to fight, Graves. You don't have to run. He smiled. All you have to do is pull the trigger. The words hung in the air. A cold, deliberate invitation. Eleanor's pulse hammered. Graves, she whispered. Jonathan simply watched, waiting. Graves stood still. Completely. Utterly. Still. Then he laughed. Soft. Amused. Dangerous. Vale's smile faltered slightly. Something funny? Graves took a single step forward. His gaze locked onto Vale's, and something in the air shifted. Tell me something, Vale, Graves murmured. How many times have you done this? Vale raised an eyebrow. Killed a man. He tilted his head mockingly. I lost count after 50. Graves smirked. And how many of them hesitated? Vale's smile twitched. Graves took another step. Slow. Calculated. I imagine you're used to easy kills. Terrified men. The kind that beg. His voice lowered. I'm not one of them. Vale's grip on his gun tightened. Graves smiled. And that's what frightens you. In that instant, Vale moved. The gun fired. But Graves was already in motion. The bullet grazed past Graves' shoulder, ripping through fabric but missing flesh. Graves lunged. Vale twisted, pivoting with practiced speed, but Graves was faster. His cane struck first, slamming against Vale's wrist. The pistol clattered to the stone floor. Eleanor grabbed Jonathan, pulling him back as the two men collided. Vale snarled, drawing a dagger from his belt. Graves ducked the first slash, pivoting on his heel. The blade skimmed past his ribs too close. Vale was skilled, precise, efficient, but so was Graves. The fight was swift and brutal, two predators testing each other's limits. Vale lashed out with the dagger. Graves sidestepped. Vale kicked low. Graves barely avoided it. Then Graves saw his opening. the smallest hesitation in Vale's stance. And he struck. His cane knife lashed forward, slicing across Vale's forearm. Blood splattered the stone floor. Vale hissed, staggering. His eyes flicked downward, only for a second. It was 1 second too long. Graves twisted the dagger from Vale's grip and drove it into his shoulder. Vale choked out a curse. He stumbled backward, slamming against the cell wall. For the first time, he looked shaken. Graves loomed over him. "You're good," he murmured. His voice dropped to a whisper. "But I'm better." Vale panted, his back pressed against the cold stone. Blood dripped from his arm and shoulder. His smirk was gone. Graves tilted his head. "Did you really think I'd kill him?" Vale exhaled sharply. "I thought you might." Graves smiled coldly. "Then you don't know me at all." He took a step closer. Vale tensed. "You wouldn't." Graves leaned in. "Wouldn't I?" A heartbeat of silence. Then Graves struck. Not to kill, but to end the game. The hilt of his cane smashed into Vale's skull. The assassin's eyes rolled back. He slumped forward, unconscious. Graves straightened, exhaling slowly. Eleanor stared. "Is he dead?" Graves rolled his shoulder. "No," Jonathan groaned. "Pity." Graves smirked. "I need him alive." He turned to Eleanor. "Tie him up. Use the chains." Eleanor nodded, moving quickly. Jonathan squinted at Graves. "So what now?" Graves glanced at the clock on the wall. The trial was meant to conclude at dawn, which meant they still had time to turn this game against the society. His eyes gleamed. "Now," Graves murmured, "we turn their test into a trap."
Every mystery leaves a mark. And the next case is already unfolding. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe, like, and share. There are more secrets waiting to be uncovered. Join us in the next chapter of A Study in Secrets.